Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new Let's Learn album series. Today we are going to be kicking off episode number 1 of Let's Learn Facelift, the tutorial and analysis series of Alice in Chains' debut album from front to back. Now, although this will be heavily focused on the guitar parts, I'm also going to include other elements of the composition as well that pertain to its importance. That includes Mike Starr's bass lines, we got Sean Kinney's drum parts, and of course, how can we forget Lane Staley's iconic vocal throughout. Now let's make haste not waste, and let's get into every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full detailed musical analysis of We Die Young by Alice in Chains. Now before we even begin playing a single note, I must make a note that we need to bring the entire guitar down a half step. So this is going to be E-flat standard tuning. Now in addition to that, we also, now hold on, I didn't make a mistake. We're going to drop down this low string down another whole step. So we have drop D-flat tuning. So that's going to be D-flat, A-flat, D-flat, G-flat, B-flat, and E-flat. Now let's get into the first bone-crushing riff that starts off the entire album, and also starts off We Die Young. You know the part. Here it is. And what better way to kick off an album with one of the most unique, heavy riffs I've ever heard in my life. We start at the 2nd fret of the low E string, or better yet, the low D string, or even better yet, the low D flat string. Now I'm going to be referring to these as if we are in drop D tuning or standard tuning, so all the note names are going to reflect that, so just keep that in mind. We start off on the 2nd fret with a drop D power chord, so a bar across the D, A, and D strings will do just fine, just like this. Then we got to drop down to 2 open Ds, okay? So the heaviest D you can get on the planet. And then we come up to here. You got to do a half step bend and release on the 6th fret. Now the 6th fret is a tritone away from the original note, so it's the most diabolical interval of all time. Remember that. People used to get murdered over this by the church. It's pretty unbelievable stuff. Now, and we're playing it right here like it's no big deal. So, very cool. And then we got to go back to the open D string. And then we go right to the 3rd fret. Little palm mute. And then to a 3-5. So everything else just plays on the 3rd and the 5th fret. So let's do that really slow. Watch. Pointer finger here. Ring. And if you pay attention to that rhythm, technique-wise, this will be very easy. Now that we have the frets, let's figure out the function of what's going on. So we're actually in the key of D minor, as set up by this whole thing, or a D minor blues. But we're not starting on a blues note. We're actually starting on the 2nd scale degree, which is not a very common move. Usually it'd start on the flat 3rd or something like that. But here we're starting on the 2nd, to the open, to the tritone, to the flat 3rd, basically green onions, if you ever heard that. I'm sure everybody knows this. Booker T and the MG's classic rock and roll outfit. That half step bend right in the middle is what gives this a lot of bluesy attitude. And make sure you hit that bend with as much attitude as if you had a pair of sunglasses on all day long and all night long, even while you sleep, just like Jerry and Lane used to do all the time. Let's play that slow. This I'm going to call variation 1. Here we go. Now let's move on to variation number 2. The 2nd time adds a much more busy chord line, very bluesy as well, to actually get us into the song. And it goes like this. We have a little slide going from the 5th fret to the 6th, back down, and then 3rd open. Alright, so that's like the ultimate blues line. Just reminds me of a Pantera riff. So let's play both variation 1 and 2 back to back for the full intro. Here we go, ready? Nice, variation 1, variation 2. Scary. So far we can characterize this as being a blues line with a little bit more eccentricity and color with that natural second scale degree on the bottom. It's not a very common move. Now as we progress through the song, we are going to see a lot more of that color and eccentricity shining through. But let's make our way to the next section, which is verse number 1. Let's check that out. Okay, so most of that is exactly the same, but it is elongated and includes one extra variation, variation number 3, at the end of the riff, which takes us into what would be the pre-chorus section. So let's go through that. We start with variation 1. Oh yeah. Variation 2. Back to variation 1. And here, we cap it off with variation number 3. Check this out. We got some big mondo power chords going on there. These are bigger power chords than I've ever seen in my entire life up to this point. Now check this out. We're still going to bar the 3rd fret to get that low D power chord, the nice crunchy one. But then we're going to add our ring and our pinky up on the 5th and the 6th frets in addition to that. This creates a big 2-octave F power chord, okay? So we'll go like this, with a little open D palm mute in the middle, going up to G, with the same exact shapes. Before moving to the pre-chorus riff, let's hear the opening vocal line sung by Lane Staley.
Scaries on the wall, Scaries on his way.
Now here's our second example of something more eclectic being thrown right underneath our noses. Check this out. Scaries on the wall. Now that one note in the middle is not within a standard D minor context. A normal D minor scale will have the notes D, E, F, G, A, B flat, right? That's the sound of the D natural minor scale. Flat 7 or C, and D as the root. So 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 1. Now, this does not utilize that B flat or the flat 6 interval. It opts to do a B natural, which is a natural 6th. That means this is using the Dorian mode, okay? Scaries on the wall, natural 6 going to the 5th, right? In a regular D minor context, it would actually sound like this. Scaries on the wall. Sounds completely different, and honestly doesn't sound nearly as cool, and not as eccentric either, alright? Sounds a little too dramatic the other way. This makes it sound a little more bluesy and a little more like you can ride your motorcycle and not have anybody bothering you out on the street. You can just wear your sunglasses all day and all night without your mother yelling at you. The Dorian mode is typically found in music, let's say, by Carlos Santana, the Allman Brothers bands. A lot of jam bands like to use this mode. And you can also find it in a lot of Indian folk music, Eastern music. Right, Chris Cornell, a lot of grunge bands were using this. Well, Alice in Chains is a grunge band, right? But to see this in almost a heavy metal context is very, very, very refreshing. What's also refreshing is this next pre-chorus part that you're about to hear. So more usage of those big power chords, and also more use of those chug-a-lugs that your mother and father warned you about years ago. We'll call this variation 1, and I'll call out the fret numbers as we're going. We actually start off at the 11th fret. That's a C sharp, a natural 7th. So we use the same big power chord shape from before. Watch this. Ready? 11, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 3, 11. Right back down, okay? So make sure you catch all of those mutes where they're applicable. Now right out of the gate, that C sharp that starts the whole thing isn't even naturally occurring within the D minor scale. That actually comes from the D harmonic minor scale, the note C sharp anyway. This chord though, doesn't even exist in the key of D minor, so we're just completely ignoring all the rules of convention here. But we are implying that the C sharp is being used, which is actually a major 7th. A very tense interval indeed, and also another example of eclecticism or eccentricism or eccentricity, whatever we want to call it. Coming back into that, we have yet another variation. So this is going to be variation 2 on the pre-chorus. Watch this. We start at 11 once again. Watch. We basically bring back the other variation 2 that we had from the beginning, and we have that little blues line in there. So one more time. 11, 3, 6, 5, 3, open. Super bluesy, one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. And after that, we have one final itty-bitty change right at the very end. We'll call this variation 3. And here it is. We start at the 11th fret once again. Watch. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 5. And a nice, strong rhythm. 3 and 4 for a really heavy beat 4 right at the end, which will transition us into yet the next part. But before we get there, let's take a look at what we're doing. We're actually flipping around the chords that we had from just before. Now we're used to seeing this. G going down to F, a descending motion. But here we have F and G being flipped around. So flat 3 to 4 to give us one of the best sounding things I've ever heard. I'm going to be saying that a lot because I love Alice in Chains, and I know you do too. And that's one of the things that makes this song so difficult to learn. All the variations that exist. And not just variations, interchangeable variations. Parts that exist between part A and part B. So the verse and the pre-chorus share some very similar ideas within their part. So that makes it kind of tricky to get through. Now what's also tricky is this vocal harmony that comes in on the later part of the pre-chorus. Check this out.
I'd advise you wait until it's over.
Now this vocal is harmonized using thirds, and the lower voice starts off on the 5th, like that, or the power chord note, and the main part starts up on the flat 7th, and we're still using the D Dorian mode. Alright, now check this out, ready? Right minor, until, watch this. At the very end, it hits an F sharp on the top voice, so it resolves into a D major chord, which is now no longer Dorian. It makes this Mixolydian, which is basically the same thing, but with a major context. That is insane. Now that's the happy chord, as they say, right? Now, immediately after that, Lane goes into this note.
Then you got hit.
Now that's Lane hitting an F natural immediately after hitting an F sharp down at the bottom. Right? So if you listen to the difference between the two, here's F natural, and then here's F sharp. Now that's two different musical worlds being put into the same chord. A common move in the jazz and blues world is to put a sharp 9th on top of a dominant 7th chord. That creates that sound, or better yet, the Jimi Hendrix chord as popularized in Purple Haze. Right? Now, this chord has both a major third in an F sharp and a minor third, an F natural, within its walls. Now, because it's a sharp 9th, that F natural is not really an F natural because it's a sharp 9th. It has to be some kind of E. So we're going to sharp the E and make it an E sharp. So it's not an F natural, it's an E sharp. Get over it, I'm right. So we can now say that Lane Staley is a very rare example of somebody singing an E sharp in a song. Doesn't happen very often. Let's cherish it while it's here. Now, the bass line underneath this section is just playing a pedal D under the entire thing. Alright, so that means we're under the thumb of D. Woo! Let's take a look at the chorus section. Now the chorus is basically the same as the first riff of the song, so that comes back, but the vocals are doing something completely different on the top, so let's hear that.
And we die young. The faster we run.
That chorus is made up of a two-part harmony between Jerry Cantrell on the low part and Lane Staley on the high part. All these notes are going to be within a D minor context because that's what the riff is in. So the low part utilizes the 5th, the flat 7th, the 4th, back to the 5th. Or better yet, and we die young. So pretty cool. The high part actually starts on the same note but up the octave using this sequence. A high A on the top, going down to a G, which is the 4th, right down the scale. F, the flat 3rd, E to D, which is 2 to 1. Alright, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or and we die young. Pretty nice sounding. You put both of those together and you get something like this. Pretty simple sounding, but very effective over that riff. Beyond that, we hit right into pre-chorus 2, so we skip the verse entirely. We roll through the riff just like we normally would. Here we go. Oh yeah. I got my sunglasses. I got them on. Then I got hit. Okay? So there's nothing crazy going on there. It's all the same part. I must also give a nod to this crazy note that Lane Staley sings up top during the start of this verse. It's actually a flatted 5th going up to a natural 5th. Alright, check it out.
Down, 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 you're rolling.
It creates what we call a diminished sound. Kind of spooky, almost like creepy crawly, very unsettling. Something we've become accustomed to when listening to Alice in Chains over the years. Very, very, very dark music. Now, chorus 2 doesn't just come in the way that it came in last time. We're actually interrupted by this riff that comes in here. Let's check that out. We're over at the 3rd fret, hammering into the 5th on the A string like this. And then a nice series of trills, and then holding that 3rd fret. Now you want to make sure you're trilling, which is a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs, okay? Basically just literally pull off the string and don't use your pick at all. And you maybe want to get a set of 5 or 6 of those to complete the amount of time that you need. Right after that we play the riff. That's the same old variation coming around again, that bluesy variation that's appeared in 3 different sections of the song. So that's kind of crazy. The verse, the pre-chorus, and this all have it in there. So that's what I said before. It's kind of tricky to learn this song because of all the variations and when they come in and out. The next part we get a little fancier. We're actually going to do this. We're going to bend the 5th fret of the G string and hold the 3rd fret of the B string like this. Static. Watch. And you get that sound, right? Very aggressive rock and roll sound. Then you release it and use a lot of vibrato right there. That's one where you want your sunglasses on for at least 14 days in a row, alright? Everybody's getting really concerned about you because you won't take your sunglasses on. You went on the cruise ship, you didn't take your sunglasses off. You went to the grocery store, you didn't take your sunglasses off. You passed by the watermelons, you didn't take your sunglasses off. The only time you took your sunglasses off was never, alright? So we're doing this. Now all these 2 notes are, right, is a flat 7 function. So a D7. The flat 7 is the C, which is also in this octave too. So watch. Flat 7, riff, flat 7, and riff. Now that's a very, very, very bluesy sound and just acts as an intermezzo between the chorus lines. Now it might not seem like it, but that riff played in between this is actually a response to the bass line. That's right, the bassist Mike Starr plays this first. The bass starts off the riff, right? While the guitar is doing this. So that's a pretty cool take on that idea, and then it just hangs on a D while the guitar plays the riff. So it's a call and response, and they're both playing different things at different times, but eventually they're playing the same part, so that's pretty cool. And I feel like it's a lost art when the guitar and the bassist play different things. I feel like on older recordings I used to hear this all the time, and even up until the 1990s, which I believe was a great musical renaissance, by the way. This kind of thing was happening. The guitar and the bass line would be playing different things, distinct parts. I think newer bands can learn from this, and they should definitely take heed to what I'm telling them. Learn from the old guys, people, please. They were filled with more wisdom than we can imagine. Now after that call and response, we hit him with chorus 2. The vocal line stays exactly the same, but the chords change underneath, and it's also half the length before being interrupted by that riff we just heard. So let's check that out.
And we
It's interesting how we can use two radically different ideas under the same part and have it still work. It's really just two held out big power chords based on the massive giant power chords we saw before. Check it out. We start here, 3rd fret, which is F, 3, 3, 3, 5, 6, just a big F power chord on the flat 3 chord. Then we move up to the 5th fret like this. But this time, we're going to play all 6 strings, alright? So we have 5, 5, 5, bar across, 7th, 8th, that's a big G power chord, but we're adding that 5th fret up top with the bar. Now that basically creates a sus2 chord, okay? So that's an A natural on top of a G. Sus2, very cool sound. Sounds really awesome with all the gain too. Ready? One more time. Ready? Flat 3rd chord F, push to that G. These chords also make the vocal line have much more melodic weight to them. Check this out. Ready? Right? So it sounds totally different on top of just these 2 chords. Much more melodic. Much more accentuation on those melodic parts and the harmonies as well, because we have an actual harmonic function going on with the flat 3rd and the 4 chord. Sounds completely different than when we played it over the riff before, but it's still the same idea, right? The same point is getting made, and it's still familiar. And we know this chorus 2 by now, right? So check this out, ready? It sounds beautiful. And then of course we go into the next part, which by the way is that same exact guitar and bass line. So let's just hear that for shits and giggles. And to further along the song, we are greeted with yet another chorus here with Faster We Run. Ready? Faster we run. With that same beautiful harmony and those same beautiful chords, which then takes us into the guitar solo, which happens over the original riff of the song. So enjoy as we hear Jerry Cantrell's short but sweet We Die Young guitar solo. A short but sweet solo that's sure to rearrange every molecule of your facial occipital domain. Let's split it up into 4 parts. The first part deals with some very silly motions up the B string like this, with a very big whammy bar jism right at the top. Now, basically all you're doing, you're starting at the 10th fret of the B string. You're going to use your ring finger, and you're basically going to use it to slide rapidly like this, going up a fret, down a fret, alright? Kind of like a swarm of bees climbing Mount Vesuvius, or like a rabid squirrel, or a spastic squirrel at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Now, once we hit the top, you basically want to do the same exact thing. You want to quiver that big goddamn whammy bar, which is basically an intergalactic ferret folding itself between alternate dimensions. Listen again. You hear that quiveringness, right? You have to make sure it's extremely anxious, extremely nervous, and erratic, okay? Like a pile of weasels on a Christmas morning. Watch. Slow. We're going up. Very nice, and you want to slide out nicely too. Now, in order to get this, you basically have to just repeat it along with the recording. It's very difficult to get things like this with the exact articulation, but it is possible. Just keep practicing these notes until you die. So after we finish making spastic rodent noises, it's time to play some actual notes. And here's the whole lick. Ready? Very tasty, very bluesy, very signature of Jerry Cantrell. Now, we're basically coming into this position over here. We're going to do a whole step bend on the 17th fret of the G, and then pull off into the 14th of the G, going into the 15th fret of the D string. Now that's a resolution. This is actually a really fancy way of playing a D minor arpeggio, which are just the chord notes that we're looking for. We're just replacing that static note with a nice big bend. We then move down into the 10th fret position, and we're basically going to do a hammer-on from the 10th to the 12th of the D string, which is the flat 7 to the root. A lot of blues here, like this. Nice, beautiful sound, and then we're going to go 10th and 10th on the G and B. That kind of sounds like a train horn. Here comes the train crossing the tracks, you're going to get it. Watch that, 10th fret. Then you're going to do this, ready? A bend on the 12th fret. You want to hit that 3 times before releasing back to the 10th fret. And you also want to grab the high E string on this as well, alright? Now, you're basically going to create 3 different tones by doing this. So you're going to bend, and then release, gradually release. You're going to have 3 different notes in between. These are called quarter tones, okay? So you hear how there's barely any difference between those 3? That's what you want. You want the most subtle difference possible within a half-step bend, okay? So you're basically getting 3 notes when you should only be getting 2 different ones, at least if we're dealing with equal temperament. But because we can bend strings on the guitar, we can make it sound like we're in the Middle East here, or India, better yet. Okay, and then a lot of nice vibrato on that last one there. Following that, we hit up something that Chuck Berry would indeed be proud of. We start by bending into the 12th fret, and then barring the 10th and the 10th of the B and the E. Watch this, ready? Very nice sound, ultimate blues town, alright? Awesome, I love the sound of that. Now all we're doing is that 12th fret bend is basically going into the 5th of the D chord, okay? So this is 5 into the unison note, while still holding it, of course. So that's a 5 and a 5. And then the top note is the root. So we're basically just going 5 to 1. 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. Just with plenty of attitude. And of course, that last part, you're going to pre-bend to the 12th fret and then pull into the 10th, coming down to the 12th of the D. See how that's all one motion? Pick, pull, pick. Awesome, I love that sound. This last section is probably the most difficult as it covers the most ground and has the most notes involved. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quite possibly has the most attitude to it as well with those pinch harmonics in there. You want to basically pinch the whole way through, and then whichever ones you get, you're going to get, right? Play it all as one thing. Now, you're basically coming in on the and of beat 4, so it's a little syncopated. And if you don't syncopate it, you're not going to get all the notes out in time before the section ends. But we're starting off with something that looks almost like the A minor pentatonic position. But we're basically bending into the 9th fret or on the 7th fret, a whole step. That goes up into an E, that's the 9th of that. And then we're going all the way down to the flat 7th on the 5th fret. Okay, so we saw that motion up here, but we're playing it here. Alright, just on the upbeat. And we're going to come back up, come down this chromatic thing to the flat 3rd of the D. Alright, so this is all D minor pentatonic. We started off looking like it was an A minor pentatonic, and then we go right into the notes of D minor pentatonic or D minor blues, because we got that nice chromaticism going on. And then, nice half-step bend. Pentatonic run with a little blues bend, and then down here. That's basically the tritone that I was talking about before, very diabolical interval. That's what it sounds like when you play it together, but it's down here. Then you go into the 5th fret, which is the perfect 4th, and just very bluesy intervals once again, and then finally sliding into the final note. Awesome. Following that solo, we come into another verse. So Scary's on the Wall is coming back again, okay? That was incredibly grammatically incorrect, but I don't really care. But Scary is coming back onto the wall. Hasn't been on the wall in a while. It's been on the floor because Jerry Cantrell's been stomping on it with his guitar solo. Now, this part is a slightly different approach, but it still has the same riff involved, okay? And the guitar solo also bleeds into it. So it makes it sound more like a breakdown than anything else. Check this out. Now, as you can see, I included the drums in this section because that's the only unique variation that's happening here, okay? The drums are making it seem more like a breakdown, more like a proper bridge than the poppy feel that we were getting before, right? With the hi-hat and the snare drum. These are just on the toms. Boom, 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 right? Just like that, and not hi-hat like ch-cha-doo-da. We're not getting any of that stuff going on, but it gives it that feeling that we're transitioning out of a part, and we're also transitioning into a unique section. Okay, so it makes it a little more special when it comes around again, and it doesn't bore us. Even though it's impossible to get bored of a song that's 2.5 minutes long, you know what I mean? But they do a good job of keeping it fresh, even though the length of the song is so short. Now, with that said, the song rolls around to another pre-chorus, which is basically exactly the same. But on the last chorus, there's something very specific that happens, and it's actually a very glaring difference than the other two choruses. Let's see how well you've been paying attention thus far. Now, did you figure it out? The lyrics are actually in the right order this time. Alright, so we actually start off with faster we run instead of and we die young. Right? We should be ending the sentence with and we die young because we are adding something additional onto the end of it with the word and. That's typically in grammar what we do, right? Now, I'm not going to be a grammar Nazi here, but I'm also going to be a grammar Nazi. Jerry Cantrell is a lyrical genius. He wrote the lyrics to this song, by the way, and he made it work. He made every other chorus seem totally normal, just saying, starting off with and we die young. As if there was something to come before it, right? But nothing comes before it. I mean, you could say the line in the previous pre-chorus came before it, but I don't count that. This is a whole separate section right here. And we die young, faster we run. It's almost poetic. It's almost Shakespearean in a way. Now, this time we're singing it the proper way. We're singing it in the right direction. Faster we run, and we die young. Okay, we are dying young in addition to running faster, correct? So that's just a very interesting thing that I think deserves to be pointed out. And it also ends the song with the title of the song. Genius. The last thing you hear is and we die young. Which, if we ended it on an earlier chorus, you wouldn't hear that. You'd hear faster we run and the song ends. Now, it's not a big change, but it does deserve to be pointed out. Just like everything deserved to be pointed out in this song. Thank you so much for coming along this journey on the first episode of Let's Learn Facelift. There's going to be many more. Obviously, I have to get through all the songs on the album. I'm a completionist, okay? I have OCD in that respect. I have OCD. I am OCD when it comes to this. All the songs in track order. I love albums, and I'm sure a lot of people come here because they love the albums as well. They can put it on from start to finish and not hate a single song, and that's how I am. That's how I dictate how good an album actually is, or how good an artist is, by how many great albums they can put out, front to back, no song skipped or anything like that. Even if there's a couple that are, you know, kind of duds, that's fine. A couple is better than like 7 in a row, and we've all listened to albums that have 7 duds in a row. Anyway, if you'd like to further support the channel, please go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music, and you can pledge as much as you want per month. You can support the channel on a monthly basis using your fiscal power. $1, $5. The $20 option gets you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym, which is an exclusive video series for patrons of that tier. So you got to pay $20 a month to get that. It's basically a playlist that's cumulative. So cumulative, man, I gotta learn how to speak again after these videos. It's a cumulative approach to something that I have crafted myself. Sometimes I'm just picking some random exercises, other things are theory, but it all kind of goes in one solid motion. And it's just gonna keep compounding over time. So, hey, you get in now, you'll have access to everything I did before, plus what I'm going to do in the future. And with your support, it will be more and more possible. All right, everybody, I'll see you on the next one. I don't think I need to tell you what it is, so we're just going to go there when we get there. Good night.